welcome to another video here on the Critical Focus channel. First off, a big shout out to all my members who support my work. It keeps the paint flowing and the electricity running. Members do get access to the member Discord, will influence the content, the matchups, whatnot. There is a join button below if you feel so inclined. But regardless, I am happy for your support in the form of actually just watching the video, of a like and a comment, and if you haven't already, please do feel free to subscribe as well. And if you are looking to buy Warhammer merch, there is an affiliate link in the video description as well. Let's get on with the video.
Alright folks, it's finally here, the highly anticipated errata and designer's commentary for Warhammer Underworlds Embergard, and boy is there some juicy stuff in here. As always with these, opinions will be all over the place and some nerfs are maybe too harsh, some warbands may have dodged the bullets completely, that maybe should have seen some adjustments and so on and so forth. We have a lot to get through those, so let's go. First up, we'll address some core rules clarifications and then I'll get to the warband changes. I won't talk about everything here, but I will sort of touch upon the most important stuff. First up here is a clarification to drive back, which states that there needs to be at least one success in the attack for drive back to occur, on top of course on all of the other stipulations. So very good to have this addressed, although I think more or less everyone understood that an attack with no successes were never intended to be triggering driveback. But yeah, very good. Search abilities. So there's no limit to however many search abilities you may play at any given time. I had a comment on this a while back on the channel. So as long as you have the right timing in your search ability, you can play however many search abilities on a given timing you can. So far so good, but the second part here is pretty interesting. After both players have declared all of the search abilities they want to play, and they take in turns with the active player going first, doing so, the active player then resolves all of their abilities first, followed by the passive player, for lack of a better word. So even if you take turns playing your cards, you don't actually take in turns resolving them. Rather, the active player resolves all of their abilities first and then the passive player, or non-active player I guess. And that could obviously be quite impactful. Next up is a question about a card having multiple effects but only one can be resolved, and it states here that the card may still be played in that situation. So say for example a card both pushes and pings an enemy fighter, but that enemy fighter is immune to ping damage via an upgrade. That means the card can still be played as the push can be resolved, or vice versa for that matter. So very good. Another important question here is, for the purpose of cards that count the bounty value of slain fighters, do raised fighters revert to their printed bounty characteristic if they are slain again? And the answer here is yes, which is obviously super important to know. Delve, just like before, cannot happen if a fighter cannot be given stagger tokens. So if you can't be given stagger tokens for any reason, you can't delve. Search objective timing here. If my opponent scores a search objective that immediately makes me the underdog, can I then score an objective that requires me to be the underdog? No, you have to be the underdog when you meet the condition. So that's very good. For example here, the 2 dice requirement instead of the 3-1 on Branching Fate comes to mind here. Treasure tokens, we are allowed to check the value of a face-down treasure tokens at any time except during setup. Very important clarification. So let's move over to the warbands. First up, a frequently asked question here on the Crimson Court, who I guess no one really plays anyway. You may use the bestial transformation even if you have no equipped upgrades, so just like before basically. Otherwise, very disappointing here to see no buffs to the vamps. Ember Watch next, which clarifies you are allowed to use the Alone I Stand even if you only have one friendly fighter left. Now comes the big one, Gore Chosen of Drom. Oh boy. Enrage is changed. It's still a power step ability, but it now costs 8 blood tithe instead of tithe equal to the battle round, and it's only usable on enemy fighters. So you can only force enemy fighters to charge. This is a big one obviously, but they needed a big one. Very big nerf, but it has its merits of course. Force your opponent to move out of position, and it also makes cards that counts charge tokens on all fighters inside a specific territory, for example, very valid, and not least end phases that requires all fighters to be charged. I think there is a 3 glory one that still makes this very useful. The other one here is to Final Frenzy, that can't now heal you beyond being vulnerable, and at the end of the action phase you automatically is slain. And with a very strong staple upgrade now Forsaken as well, which I will get to later, the last part is not dodgeable anymore, but we'll get to that. This is obviously still super useful, but it really does a lot to rein this Warband in. I still think they will see play as their stats alone are crazy good and the abilities are still very useful. They still inspire very quickly, for example, but I'm happy to see these changes. I still would have liked to see, for example, Gorehulk's range 2 on his inspired side being removed, as well as his 5th hammer on his second attack, but I'll take it, I guess. Next up is Grandfather's Gardeners, and I think these guys are very strong, and this FAQ just made them sort of even stronger, with stating that if damage from any source slays a friendly fighter with simply bringing them down to just about 0, but also moves your tracker to the heal search place, you may heal that fighter and indeed not die. Wow, these guys are already so hard to bring down, and yeah, I actually hate them, not least because I think they look horrible. It also clarifies here that uninspired friendly fighters can't take more than 2 damage in a turn, but that only goes for a single fighter. So, for example, a second friendly uninspired fighter can still be pinged in the power step off another one took 2 damage in the action step. So it's not a total of 2 damage for your entire uninspired team. For green cracks, sadly no buffs, but simply some clarifications that state you can complete Slay the Horde and Slay the Scare thing even by picking the quest after fulfilling the requirements on it, which I guess is a good clarification. I think they are still way worse of a gobbo horde gang than Sarbags are though. Grimwatch next, and here is simply some clarifications on timing on the In the Name of the King. Yeah, sort of that it only happens in the power step basically. Jaws of Itzel clarifies the much anticipated predatory fighters to only work on melee attacks. Crazy otherwise, really. Canis Reapers just had a slight clear up in the wording of Mortec Advance and clarifies that you may inspire 0 bounty Nohem immediately after your first action step by removing 0 bounty. Yay! They sort of still suck though. I'm gonna skip over some very minor clarifications to some other warbands and get to Dagok, where his second weapon attack should have the melee rune mark instead of the ranged one. Also, Cruel Stab is now only usable once per turn, so not both in the action step and the power step, I guess. For the fast riders, the dice symbols for the leader's uninspired side are supposed to be all hammers and not swords. Sepulchral Guard next, who are already in not a great place in my opinion, have had Bone Shrapnel nerfed to only work on melee attacks. Skinnerkin has had Precise Fillet more for the pantry, and Calloused Hands nerfed to be only usable once per battle round instead of once per turn. I haven't actually had the time to play these guys yet, so please chime in on how they are doing so far. Spite Claw's Swarm has had the rune mark added to the Lurking, Hungering, and Festering Scream. Thricefold Discord's Evasive is now a search ability and nerfed to only trigger on swords or crits instead of hammer or crits, so down from 50% to 33%, which is very sensible but still quite good. Vexmore has had his Indolence changed to not work on weapon upgrades, which is also very sensible. I would have liked it to include ploy attacks too, but maybe they forgot about those. Eldritch Enmity is no longer a search ability, and Vile Temptation now have the correct timing, which is power step instead of action step. Sarbag's Gits has had the Scurry changed to how we played it in our battle report, and that is only usable once per turn and not on a fighter with a move or charge. Very good. Spin-In is also no longer an optional search ability, which means that you can't forgo it when a friendly fighter moves, is pushed or placed adjacent to Snurk, which makes him into a much bigger liability. I still think Sarbag's Gits is in a great place though. A note on the countdown to Cataclysm as well. All advancements on the Cataclysm tracker are optional, so when, for example, you could move it 4 steps for having 4 feature tokens without enemy fighters on it after you lost power step in a round, you may choose to only advance it 0, 1, 2 or 3 steps. Very interesting, and makes the end phase card Wreckers all the more reliable to score. Organized play now, and I'm gonna jump straight into Nemesis here and talk about 4 Forsaken cards, and they are all from the Reckless Fury deck. No surprises really, as that deck is crazy bananas. First up, Get It Done, which removes a charge token from one friendly fighter and hands it over to another friendly fighter. Quite a fun card, in my opinion, but obviously very strong, and it's no longer playable in Nemesis. Blade Catcher next, which totally negates all incoming weapon effects, so I'm not surprised to see this Grievous Killer gone. Fury of Akshi is a feel-bad card in my opinion, and I'm happy to see it go. And so is Utter Ignorance, that never really should have been printed, and that was the one I mentioned in tandem with the Gore Chosen nerf there to their lost ability. That is it actually, and no restricted cards here, which there certainly could have been quite a few of. But as I said, you can't have everything, and I'm at least happy to see some big nerf bats being brought into the fray here, even though I am disappointed to not see some buffs to a select few warbands, Crimson Court not least. What are your feelings on these FAQs and balance updates? Let me know down below. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye.